Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Gananam Tva Ganapati Gumhavamahe Kavyo Kavinamuvamashravastamao Jyeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatha Anashunvanno Debissedasadano Prano Devi Saraswati Vaje Virvajinivati Dinamamitrayavato Ganeshaya Namaha Saraswatyai Namaha Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Sarvalokanam Visaje Bhavaroginaha Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam Sri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Dakshinamurtaye Pada Namaskaram Harihi Om. Om Partaya Pratibodhitham Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitham Purana Munina Madhya Mahabharate Advaitamritavarshinem Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyatyinim Ambhatvam Anushandadami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Krishna Yarpanamastu Anyada Sharanam Nasti. Sai Ram, Vanakkam, Namaskaram, Vandanam, and welcome to week 5 in the series of the key learnings from the great epic Mahabharata. Today is quite a special day because it is also Sri Ramanavami, right? The Tithi is Navami, and therefore Ramanavami also falls on this auspicious day. So let me also say, a Namaskara Shloka for him. Om Ramaya Ramabhadraya Ramachandraya Vedase Raghunathaya Nathaya Sithayam Pataye Namaha Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane Rama Nama Varanane Nama Ithi Om Dasharananthaya Vitmahe Sitha Vallabhaya Dhimahe Tanho Rama Prachodayat. Harihi Om. Sri Rama Jayam Jai. So happy celebrating Ramanavami Day today. Rama is a just 2 syllables, Rama. But it has the power to completely transform your life if you chant it. That's why it's called a Taraka Mantra. Taraka Mantra means one that has the capacity to completely change your mind. Sri Ramajayam. Okay. Anyway, today, week 5, we go on to look at the great character Ashwathama. Last week, remember, we looked at another great character, Karna. Right? So today, we move on to look at Ashwathama. Perhaps, to kick off, it's worth mentioning that, Ashwathama is perhaps one of the most fascinating characters in the entire epic of Mahabharata. Because his father, the great Dronacharya, right, happened to be his father. The great Dronacharya was his father, and he was the son of the great warrior teacher. So life, as far as Ashwathama was concerned, is a mix of great power, but with power comes a lot of challenges, comes a lot of struggles. So Ashwathama went through a cycle of emotional struggles. In the end, a tragic destiny. So if you cannot maintain your sense of discrimination or viveka, at some point, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your family status is, you will go down if you cannot maintain that sense, right? Another example is from the great Ramayana. You had Ravana, right? Dashamukha, right? Dashamashtaka, 10 heads, 10 faces. 10 faces represent 6 sastras and the 4 Vedas. So he was a very highly learned man. He was Ravana. That's why he's called Ravaneshwaran, Iswaran, right? Greatest stage of any title that is given is Iswaran. So there are 2 Iswarans in the entire Hindu pantheon, right? And I've mentioned before. One is Ravaneshwaran, the other is Shaniswaran, right? Shani, Lord Shani, not Satan. So he could not maintain the dharma of these knowledge. He was not putting them in practice. He was not applying them. Therefore, at the end, it was a tragic destiny for him too. So if you look at all those fellows who fell at the end of their life, even though they were great warriors, they had a lot of power, they were so knowledgeable, highly literate, but because the dharma of the jnana was not maintained or applied, in the end, it goes. And so too, as we explore Ashwathama today, what was his role in Kurukshetra, and what was the philosophy behind the curse that made him immortal, right? So that's what we'll be talking about. And hopefully at the end of this session, you'll have an idea of why Ashwathama is kind of a very intriguing figure in the Indian epic of Mahabharata. Firstly, his name, Ashwathama, right? What does that mean? Ashwa means horse, right? Those of you who've been to Kashi, Varanasi, you know there is a gut called Dasha Ashwamedha gut, right? That is 10 horses. Dasha means 10, Ashwa means horses. Now, Ashwa means horse. Thama, means sound. Nadha, Brahma, Natham, Tham, Thamma, Tham, Shabdham, Tham. Tham means sound. So Ashwathama means when he was born, he cried out like a horse. He was rather, like a neigh sort of thing. So he was called Ashwathama. But his actual name was Drauni, right? He was, if you look at the early books, he's also referred to as Drauni. And as you know, he is the son of the great Dronacharya, so Dronacharya, but his name is Drona. And of course, we find out that he later becomes a friend and a close ally of the great Duryodhana, right? The eldest amongst the Kaurava siblings. Now, he was trained alongside the Kauravas and the Pandavas. So at this point, you have to think, well, he was not born of a Kshatriya race. He had nothing to do with the princes, both the Pandava and the Kaurava princes. So how come he was in the Gurukula training? Well, his father is the teacher. Who's going to question the teacher? The teacher says to the son, come and join. So he was trained alongside the Pandavas and the Kauravas. That means, I want you to understand that Ashwathama always had the choice of befriending the Pandavas or befriending the Kauravas, because he was training with them. Obviously, when you train with people on a daily basis for years, you come to know of their character. You come to know of their key, temperaments. What is good about them, what is not so good about them, what you like, what you don't like. So you get to know them. And he made a choice. He clearly chose Duryodhana for various reasons. And I'll tell you about those reasons shortly. But he was also called a Maharati because he fought alongside the Kauravas in the Great War, and he fought against the Pandavas, right? But, in the end, being a great warrior itself isn't enough. There has to be some dharmic action on your part, right? It doesn't matter who you are. The moment you engage in adharmic actions, right? And I've mentioned to you before, adharmic actions, not only what you do physically, right? What you think, what you say, and what you do. When there is that alignment in the three forces of, a human person who is alive, then you get the benefits. It cannot be one is aligned, one is out of alignment, and the other is not in alignment. It has all three. This is called Trikona Shakti, right? You have to have that alignment in place between, your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So this was not the case of, as we saw last week with Karna. Certainly was not the case with the Kauravas, which we saw before that last week. Today we are looking at Ashwathama, also the same thing. But Ashwathama is also interesting because apart from Karna and Arjuna, he was another person who was endowed with a lot of astras or weapons with which he was fighting alongside Duryodhana, right? So Ashwathama had gained various knowledge, obviously through his father, right? Some things his father taught him, he never taught the Kauravas or the Pandavas, because his father's thinking was, even if I am gone, because Ashwathama knows this, he will still be held, in close camp with the Kauravas. Okay. But he was known by other names like, Drona Putra, son of Drona, Guru Putra, same thing, son of the Guru Drona. He was also known as Kripi Kumara, son of Kripi, the mother, and Acharya Putra. Like that, he's known by some names. But if you look at his birth and if you look at his early life, it was not as easy as his later life, right? Which explains perhaps why he wanted to side Kauravas, right? Because if you had a choice between befriending a poor peasant and a rich millionaire, I don't think many would choose the poor peasant, right? One or two may. The majority would choose the rich millionaire for obvious various reasons, right? Now, what happened was, for many years, Drona and Kripi did not have a child. So Drona went to a cave to do tapasya, right? It's a place called, it's a Shiva near a Shiva temple. Cave was behind the temple. It's called Tapkeshwara, Mahadev temple. It is near Dehradun. Dehradun, as you know, is near Uttarakhand. So that is where it actually happened. So if you trace the original documents and almanacs, they tell you exactly where what happened, right? So it is not some mythology or some story made up by some grandma trying to feed the grandson, right? No, it has actually happened. And every time I tell you something, I tell you the word and what the word means and what it reflects in terms of today's geography, right? So Dronacharya, Drona as he then was known, performed many years of tapasya and prayed to Lord Shiva, wanting a son who is as Rudrik, as powerful as Lord Shiva. And fair enough, after several years, Lord Shiva appeared and he says, so be it. And when he was born, Ashwathama was born with a divine gem on his forehead. Most of you who have seen a picture or an iconography of Ashwathama, you'll see that he's got a divine gem where his Agnya Chakra is, right there in the middle. And this gave him power over all beings lower than humans, including some humans. It also protected him from things like hunger, thirst, fatigue, old age, disease, weapons, and deities. So it kind of made him invincible and immortal, that gem, right? So later you'll find out why that gem was removed and why he was cursed to, a life of deathlessness, right? But Drona was very poor at that time. He was just a normal rishi, right? And he was very poor. So Ashwathama's early life was very difficult. They were so poor they couldn't even afford milk. But because he was born with the power where he does not experience hunger, disease, he could live, but he just was not enjoying life as he should have been, because of his father's status. So Drona recognized this and wanting to feed the need of, his son and his wife, he went to the Panchala kingdom where his friend, they went to school together. They went to Gurukula together, who Dronacharya and King Drupada. Drupada is Draupadi's father and Drishyatumuna's father. So he had told Drona, if ever you need any help, come, once I become king, I will give you half my kingdom. So Drona remembered this promise and he went in search of Drupada in the Panchala kingdom. When he went there, he was rebuked and he was humiliated, claiming that a king and a beggar cannot be friends. So he felt very humiliated and very insulted that his good friend, someone he went to school with, someone he trained in warfare and all, treated him that badly. So he was going back and then he met another rishi on his way back, feeling very dejected. That rishi told him, I hear in Hastinapura, they are looking for somebody to train the princes, the Pandava princess and the Kaurava princess. So you go and see Bhishmacharya and he will, hopefully he will, talk to you and you might get the job. So Drupada said, okay, not Drupada, sorry. Drona said, okay, let me go and see what waits there for me, So he went, and of course, Bhishmacharya knew about Drona and his, his warrior background. He was trained, and all of that. So Bhishmacharya spoke to Dhritarashtra, the king, and also Duryodhana, who was, a little young at that time, and because he was, the crown prince. And they made him the Asthana Acharya. That means the main Acharya, the guru for the royal children of Hastinapura. When I say the royal children, I mean both Pandavas and Kauravas. Because when Dhritarashtra talks about, the princess, he only refers to the Kauravas, his own children. But normally, when we say the princes or the royal children of Hastinapura, it is a reference to both Pandavas, the 5 Pancha Pandavas, and also the 100 Kauravas. So in training the Pandavas and the Kauravas, he also trained his own son, Ashwathama, with warfare skills, turning him into a highly skilled warrior. Because, this father-son relationship. And Ashwathama, when he was growing up, they're kind of teenagers at that time. And then they were in the same camp learning archery, learning, mace fighting, all kinds of stuff, learning, mantric powers. I told you before, there are 3 ways in which you can worship: yantra, mantra, and tantra, right? So they learned all this. And he became, he sort of developed a strong bond with Duryodhana, the eldest of the Kauravas. And once Duryodhana actually gifted him with a fine horse, a white, horse with gold manes, a gesture that won his lifelong loyalty. Again, when I spoke about Karna last week, Karna was completely loyal to Duryodhana because of what Duryodhana has done. Duryodhana knows what to do in order to get something that he needs. So anyway, the same thing, Dronacharya was gifted with so much of, royal recognition, wealth, and so on and so forth, once he became the Asthana Acharya for both the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Now, so Ashwathama's friendship with Duryodhana grew and grew and grew, like his father's friendship with Dhritarashtra and Bhishmacharya and, the rest of the royal family, which continuously fed him with good things, good life. Now, here is where we need to stop and think, does a gift require blind loyalty? Somebody gives you something, are you completely loyal to them? That's a question for you to think about and exercise what we call viveka or discrimination, right? So anyway, Dronacharya never forgot what the King Drupada did to him, right? So when he was training these guys, he set them a task. He said, I am not asking for any Guru Dakshina, but if you want to repay me for whatever I am teaching you, right? I want you, and he's talking to both the Pandavas and the Kauravas, I want you to go and arrest this king from Panchala kingdom, King Drupada, and bring him to me. So again, there was a little competition between who will succeed at this task. Will it be the Pandavas or will it be the Kauravas, right? Like Kauravas, I mean the eldest, Duryodhana, and is the next to him, Dushasana. And of course, Pandava brothers, five of them, right? Either is Arjuna or Bhima, one of these guys. Anyway, it was Arjuna who was successful, and he brought, Drupad down to Drona, and Drupad took over his kingdom and divided it into two. One, he gave it back to Drupada and said, go, I am only taking what you promised me. And the other half, he made Ashwathama the king, right? That means Dronacharya made his own son the king of its northern part. It's called Achichatra, right? And then if you go back, there is another name for it now. So let's talk about the role in Kurukshetra, right? So Drona grew alongside Bhishmacharya and Dhritarashtra. His loyalty grew. And Ashwathama, in the same parallel, grew alongside Duryodhana, right? Now, the war is happening on the 14th day, right? This is Ashwathama's power as a warrior, right? He killed many of the Rakshasas, many of the Yakshavinis belonging to the Pandava side, he killed, including Anjana Parvan, who is the son of Gatotkaja, who is the son of Bhima. So Bhima's grandson is Anjana Parvan. Okay. It was Karna who killed Gatotkaja with his, one of his powerful astras. Now, Duryodhana could see that Ashwathama had so many astras, so because he used his Sarvastra arrow and he used his Manavastra arrow and launched, a massive attack on the Pandavas, killing so many of the Pandavas on that side. He also vanquished another powerful king called Malayatvaja. Again, at the end of the day, he was so successful in the war, in the early days, right, that the entire Kaurava army, was holding him in high esteem and applauded him for that. But again, there's always a high before you hit. As they say, pride goes before a fall. So let's look at his role and how that became the background for that curse of immortality. Okay, when Bhishma fell on the 10th day, right, his father Dronacharya was made the commander-in-chief, Senapati, right, by Duryodhana. And he promised Duryodhana, Dronacharya promised Duryodhana that he will catch the eldest of the Pandavas, who's Yudhishthira. But of course, the Pandava army had got a strategy, and the key strategist was Lord Krishna. Right? If you think you are so great, imagine your creator has no supreme strategist higher than him. So he was a true strategist, right? So he could not, because the Yudhishthira was always protected by, a war formation, right? Which protected him. And of course, the one side there's Bhima, on the other side there's Arjuna, and Arjuna's chariot is driven by Krishna. So, why fear when Lord is driving you? Can you imagine? So this being unable to catch Yudhishthira as per his promise to Duryodhana frustrated Duryodhana, and that sort of soured the relationship slightly, because Duryodhana began to taunt and insult Dronacharya, saying, what happened? I thought you were a great personality, a great warrior, a great, a teacher, and then you can't even catch this one of your students. Because Duryodhana and Drona were falling out, it also affected Ashwathama's friendship with Duryodhana, right? So Krishna thought the only way to get them, because he knew the bond or the bandha between Dronacharya and the love and affection which was unparalleled that he had for his son Ashwathama. So Krishna said in his strategy, he said the only way to weaken Dronacharya, you see, the reason why these strategies were created by Lord Krishna in his 8th incarnation and by Rama in his 7th incarnation. Rama was a strategy. The only difference between the 7th and the 8th avatar, as I've always repeated, is Rama was born as a normal man without any knowledge that he was incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Krishna knew he was an incarnation. So that is the difference between 7th and 8th. So when you read about Rama, please remember that he was born as a normal human being. Therefore, whatever he did is subject to the parameters of behavioral conduct of normal human beings. You now know that he was a 7th incarnation, so you are attaching all the godly values and all the knowledge that the lords will have on Rama, which he didn't know himself, right? Until Vashishta came and told him at the end, when they went into the Sarayu river, you are Lord Vishnu. Sita is, Lakshmi. Lakshmana is Shesha. Shatrughan Varuna is the Shanghu and Chakra. Now go back. Time has come. Only then he knew who he was. Until then, he was normal. But he was a perfect man, right? Anyway, we're talking about the 8th avatar, Krishna, and the strategy. Sometimes it is not brawn power. It is brain power that you need. Right? Sometimes it is not how strong, how powerful, the great warrior you are. Sometimes a bit of intelligence is needed. And that comes always from Krishna, right? He tells you how to fight the greatest, the biggest, the grandest of war with just simple intelligence. He now knows the weakness of Drona is the attachment to his son. Yeah. So he tells the only way to weaken Drona is to say that Ashwathama has been killed in war. Now, they knew that's not going to be impossible because just like, Arjuna and Bhima were protecting Yudhishthira, Bhishma, when he was alive, Dronacharya and Duryodhana were protecting Ashwathama. So there's no way to kill him in the actual battlefield. So they were wondering what to do. How do we do this? How do we strategize this? And then Krishna says, Bhima, there is an elephant in the war called Ashwathama. You go and kill that elephant. So technically you have killed a life being called Ashwathama, right? Go and kill it and then come back. So Bhima goes, finds this elephant called Ashwathama and he kills this elephant. And then he comes back and tells Krishna is done and news is sent to Dronacharya. Of course, Dronacharya refused to believe it. And he said the only person who can confirm whether this is true or not is Yudhishthira, because Yudhishthira never lies. He never spoke any lies at all. He is Dharmaraja, the son of, Dharmaraja. So he asked Yudhishthira, is this true? And Yudhishthira, as per Krishna's guidance, said, yes, Ashwathama, the elephant, is dead. Ashwathama loudly, the elephant is very indistinctly. So Drona can't hear it. So technically he said the sentence, Ashwathama, the elephant is dead. When Drona heard that, he was completely devastated. And he was ready to give up his life. Right? He was ready to give up his life. Now here again, I want you to stop and think, right? Query the value of attachment over the value of your dharma or your duty. He was the chief commander of the Kaurava army, and his first sense of loyalty or duty is to the king, and obviously Duryodhana as the prince, crown prince. But no, he put his attachment over everything else, right? Attachment is always there, we're always attached to so many things. I told you, balastavat, kridasaktah, tarunastavat, tarudisaktah, priddhastavat, chintasaktah, parame brahmani kopina saktah. We attach ourselves to everything except that one, immutable reality that, continues to move us from one stage of unconscious awareness to a state of conscious awareness. That parame brahmane kopina saktah. And once somebody asked, this I'm talking about Adi Shankara, right? How do we move from this one stage to another stage? How do we remember God all this time? He said, hey, Mura, Jahihi danagama trishnam, Guru sadbuddhim manasivi trishnam, yella base nija karmo bhatam, vittam tena vinodaya chittam. He says you only have to focus your thoughts, your words, and your actions to that one force. That is Guru sadbuddhim manasivi trishnam. Right? Buddhim, manas. Once you align this together, then your actions will follow suit. Yella base nija karmo patam. You need not go beyond these two parameters. Vittam tena vinodaya chittam. Once you go in this line, then your chitta, all your thoughts become aligned. Easy has been given to us, but do we follow? Do we follow? No. So Drona, what happened when he heard this news and he heard the confirmation, right? As far as Dronacharya is concerned, Yudhishthira has said Ashwathama is dead. Now, he didn't hear that Ashwathama, the elephant part. Obviously, that was the strategy, right? But it was mentioned, it was stated by Yudhishthira. So as far as Yudhishthira is concerned, he did not lie. He stated a statement of fact, okay? He went to the war. He, denounced all his weapons, and he just sat in the middle of the war field, right? And Drishtadyumna, who was the son of Drupada, who was killed by Dronacharya in the war, Mahabharata war, in the Kurukshetra war, a few days before that, took this opportunity to end Dronacharya's life as a revenge for his father's death. Okay. Now, when Ashwathama came to know this, that his father had been killed, right? And they had mentioned that Ashwathama had been killed. And then he found out, that Ashwathama, the elephant, had been killed. He was enraged. He was so fueled by anger that he took out and fired the Narayana Astra. I told you he had begot so many astras. This is Narayana Astra, very powerful. And he was so filled with wrath that he invoked the Narayana Astra and fired it at the Pandavas. Narayana Astra, as I said before, from Narayana, right? Very, very powerful. And it could have ended the entire war by destroying the entire world, right? That is how powerful it is. Narayana is the sustainer. Can you imagine if he is giving one weapon, it is complete annihilation. Now, Krishna knew the power of Narayana Astra, and he also knew how to subdue the Astra. So he advised the Pandava army to completely surrender by lying down completely. That means no one person in the Pandava camp or the Pandava army should be holding a weapon. Every weapon and themselves on the ground, completely in a state of prostration. Then the Narayana Astra will sense this and it will go back to the person who sent it. It's already gone, but it can't do a job because there's nothing to kill. Nobody's holding a weapon, nothing. Because every weapon or every Astra has a criteria which must be satisfied before the Astra can be actioned or sanctioned, So it's not just you fire something, it will go and do the job and come back. It will go and see, have this criteria has all been fulfilled? Yes, now we attack. Right? That was then. That was just war, the war based on justiciability. So Krishna told everybody to do that, and they all did that. Only Bhima saying, no, I will fight. Krishna said, no, you put down your weapon and you also. So with some difficulty, they managed to, at the end, to make Bhima also lie down in a state of prostration, showing total surrender. And the Narayana Astra went back to Ashwathama. Duryodhana saw this and he said, hey, fire this again. This time, ask it to whack them again. And Ashwathama said, one of the key lessons of using the Narayanastra is you can only use it once. If you use it twice, it will turn on the user, right? You see how when gifts are given to you by the divine, there are certain, right, checkpoints. So if you don't use it according to those checkpoints, it will be non-beneficial to you. It can be disadvantageous to you, right? It can be dangerous to you as well. So here I want you to stop again and query blind revenge, attachment, and acceptance of reality. These three, right? Blind revenge, attachment, and acceptance of reality. Narayana Astra is, as I said, very, very powerful. It can destroy one Akshavini in a minute. One Akshavini, one Akshavini is a large military division, right? Maybe it talks about, I think, almost 22,000 chariots, 22,000 elephants, near about 22,000, right? 66,000 horses, and an infantry army force of almost 110 to 112,000. This is one Akshavini. And the Pandavas had 5, the Kauravas had 18. And the 18 Akshavinis belong to Krishna. Remember, I said to you, they went before the war, right? Duryodhana sat at his head, Krishna's head. Krishna was asleep. And Arjuna sat at his feet. Duryodhana thought, I sit near his head so that when he opens his eye, he sees me first. So he will give me the choice. I can make the choice, right? But when he woke up, he saw somebody at his feet. This shows the quality of humility, right? You must be humble if you want to go to God, stoop to conquer, in other words. So he saw Arjuna and he said, okay, tell me, you can have me or you can have my 18 Akshavinis. And Arjuna, again, being as humble, he said, Duryodhana is my eldest brother, my eldest brother here. So I'll allow him to choose first. Krishna said, okay, if that is what you want. Krishna never tells you to do what. He puts the card on the table and then he asks you to make the choice, because then the choice is yours. Same thing. God never forces anybody to do anything. So you have to exercise your own buddhi. You have to control your own manas, your mind. And you have to regulate your own chitta, thoughts. Right? So, but all we do is we blame God for something. Every Friday I go to temple, but look what he's done, Anyway, coming back. When he asked Duryodhana, what do you want? Duryodhana said, I want your army, 18 armies. Very powerful army. Krishna said, Tathastu, no source. And I will not carry any arms, but I can be your Partha Sarathi. Right? Partha means Arjuna, another name. Partha Sarathi means the charioteer of Partha, who is Arjuna. Arjuna said, if you are sitting in front of me, why do I need anyone else? Right? So that faith in Krishna. So anyway, Narayanastra was used. And then he saw that Narayanastra was defeated by the act of surrender. He then released the Agni Astra, Ashwathama released the Agni Astra. Agni, of course, is fire. One fire completely encompasses the whole thing, and launched it against visible forces and non-visible forces. Fire will destroy anything in its path, right? That is why we use fire as an act of worship, because in Homa and Havan, fire is the only natural force, natural element that cannot be polluted. Everything else can. Water can be polluted, air can be polluted, earth can be polluted, space can be polluted, only fire cannot be polluted. So it's called Shuddhi, right? Pure. And we offer, whatever you offer to the fire, it brings it to one state of equanimity, which is non-existence, right? So when Arjuna saw that Ashwathama had released the Agni Astra, Arjuna, in retaliation, released the Varuna Astra. Varuna Astra is the water, right? Of course, fire can only be put out by water, okay? So this, because, they knew all this, they had this knowledge of all these astras, but they never used it. So when they use it and they see the consequences, sometimes you may not be able to take it, So when Ashwathama saw this, he said, he said, how is it possible that my Agni Astra can be defeated by Arjuna's Varnastra? So at that moment, he left the battlefield confused, and he was in doubt about whether his own knowledge and skills were actually helping him in the war. So he went back to camp, and of course, the next day the war continued again. But this time he was thinking about attacking the Pandavas' camp, right? And he was planning his own little strategy, right? And he wanted to kill Drishtadyumna, who killed Drupada. Sorry, who killed Dronacharya. Drishtadyumna was Drupada's son who killed Dronacharya. And so Ashwathama wanted to kill Drishtadyumna for killing his father, Dronacharya. So he went to the camp at night. Just war means you sunrise to sunset, you fight. After that, you don't, right? You go and rest, and you can even help each other in terms of helping people who are injured and so on and so forth, looking after them. And then morning, sunrise, you fight again with the, conch blown. So he went and slaughtered the Upapandavas after killing some of the other warriors. And then he went back and he told Duryodhana, who was also on his deathbed, because, it was almost the last day of the war. And Duryodhana was almost there, ending his life after the duel with Bhima. And Ashwathama went to him and said, look, I've done this. And Duryodhana was so happy that Ashwathama did something that Bhishma, Drona, and Karna could not do before they died. So he breathed his last with that sense of some accomplishment, But his deeds then became known, Arjuna and Bhima and Yudhishthira, they were actually out of the camp, they had gone somewhere. And when they came back, they saw that all of Draupadi's children were killed, right? All the 5 Upapandavas. Of course, Abhimanyu had died in the war itself, but the other fellows, the children, all were killed. And the Pandavas became somewhat inconsolable. So here also there is an issue of attachment or bandha, but that is in appreciation of the loss of the child, not, to make them to attain a state of grandeur at the expense of dharma, right? So Bhima said, I am going to go and find this fellow and I'm going to end his life. And then, through some investigation, they found out that Ashwathama was hiding near sage Vedas ashram, near the bank of Ganges. So Ashwathama, when he was faced with Bhima, who's come, and he knew Bhima is not an easy guy. Once he makes up his mind, he'll go for the kill. Ashwathama then took out his arrow and invoked. I told you, astras can only be invoked by mantras, right? Whereas, an axe, a sword, you can just fight, but astras only by mantra invocation. So he invoked the Brahmastra. And Krishna told Arjuna, you also, because you also know Brahmastra, so let the 2 Brahmastras fight. Now Vedavyasa came and said, no. 1 Brahmastra is bad enough. If 2 Brahmastras are going to fight, it's going to end in complete annihilation. And everybody will perish, right? So he managed to, Vedavyasa told Arjuna, Vedavyasa told Ashwathama, revoke it, retract the Brahmastra. You release it, you retract it. You have the power to withdraw it. But Arjuna was trained in the art of retraction. Arjuna managed to withdraw it, took it back. And if you don't take it back, you can't use it again, right? But Ashwathama did not know how to recall it. So he diverted the course. Where he diverted the course to the womb of the pregnant Uttara, who was the wife of Abhimanyu, right? And she was carrying, Abhimanyu's son in an attempt to end the lineage of the Pandavas. But who is there Krishna is there. And what does he say? Yada yada hi dharmasya glahini bhavati bharata pyutthanam dharmasya tathatmanam sajamyaham. Paritranaya sadhuna vinashaya chatuskritam dharma samstabanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. And Krishna said, he created a shield around Uttara's womb and made that, be absorbed by a blade of grass. So the blade of grass burnt, right? If you think God has given you a gift and you are so powerful, can you imagine the person who gave you the gift also knows how to completely make that gift useless? As a result of this, what happened? Krishna ensured that the gem on Ashwathama's was taken off. So once you take that off, Ashwathama becomes a normal person, right? And then he also curses him to a complete state of deathlessness. But you want immortality, isn't it? You will be immortal, but you will be subject to every form of misery that human beings go through, and you will never die, right? And you will only survive when you actually save the mother who is going to be carrying the final avatar of Lord Vishnu, which is Kalki Bhagavan. When the mother who is carrying Kalki, you will be there until the end of Kali Yuga to save this lady. Only when you save that lady, you will get moksha. Until then, you are going to be roaming and fully recognizing what you have done in this war and what you have received as a result of doing all those adharmic things. This is what Krishna said to him. And of course, his jewel was removed and he was condemned to a humanly life on earth with all the miseries, pains, pain, pleasure, everything, with no death. Apparently he's still around, right? And they have made a movie called Kalki 28, something like that. This is a futuristic, in some dystopian future. But I have to tell you, when you watch movies, right, there is a certain element of commercialization in movies. So some of the things are not told in the way that they happened. Obviously, for commercial profits and to ensure that there is a balance and I'm not hurting this person, I'm not hurting that person. So sometimes history is slightly twisted in order to be politically correct. So if you're watching movies about Ramayana, Mahabharata, everything, remember, it is a movie. It is created by a producer, directed by someone who have taken the base storyline and have developed it in a way that is beneficial for them, right? So Ashwathama's story is really, on the one hand, awe-inspiring, and on the other hand, is quite tragic. He was blessed with so many good things, powers, unmatched skills. He could have been a great hero, but his anger, krodha, and his thirst for revenge, greed, lobha, I had such a bad life, so I want this, 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 I want this. An attachment, bandha. Okay, all that brought his, tragic end about. His story, I think, at best is a reminder to us humans today how anger and making the wrong choice. That's why I said to you, there are, the Ashta doshas. If you see the Nataraja statue of Lord Shiva, where he's dancing, he's stepping on a little baby. That little baby is not a baby, it's a demon, right? It's a dwarf demon called Apasmara Purusha. And that is representative of the Ashta doshas, the 8 doshas of human beings, namely Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mara, Mamada, Matsarya, Hamkara, 8 Ashta doshas. And by Shiva dancing and trampling on this demon, Apasmara Purusha, he's telling, I am the master. I have mastered all these 8 Ashta doshas. So Ashwathama is a clear example of anger and living a life filled with revenge and greed. It will ruin even the most powerful of people. Okay, intelligence, patience, and fairness will always be at your side to help you, assist you. Adharma will get you maybe to some place, but at the end to no place, nowhere, because you will face the karmic actions. You will face the consequences of your karmic actions. Like I said to you, karma is like a boomerang. Once you throw it, it becomes, comes back to you with astounding accuracy. That is karma. So Ashwathama, despite his downfall, he's not dead. He's called a Chiranjeevi. Chiranjeevi means, there's no death. So immortality is there. So in our Vedas, there is a particular shloka or stotra called Sapta Chiranjeevi Stotram. So there are 7 immortals that is codified in this stotra, right? In fact, if you go to Kerala, and the big, huge temple with so much of history, Ananta Padmanabha Swami temple in Thiruvananthapuram, there is a shrine for Ashwathama. The only place in India where there's a shrine for Ashwathama. But the Chiranjeevi, Sapta Chiranjeevi Stotram, Sapta means 7, Chiranjeevi means, immortal, Stotra means, of course, right? Names Ashwathama, Bali, Vyasa, Hanuman, Vibhishana, Kripa, and Parasurama. 7. Ashwathama Balit Vyaso Hanumanscha Vibhishana Kripa Parashuramascha Saptaita Chiranjeevinaha. Then it goes on to say, Saptathai Smarasmarinas Nityam Markandeya Mahashtamam Jiva Dvasa Satam Sopi Sarva Vyadi Nivaranaha. It says, there are 7 Chiranjeevis, but the 8th one is deemed to be Markandeya. And anyone who worships or repeats this stotra will be free from ailments and receive longevity. This is called the Sapta Chiranjeevi Stotra. You can research it and find out. And that's the story of Ashwathama. Next week, we're heading into week 6, and we'll look at Bhishmacharya, another great character. Bhishmacharya. Okay. Om Anyada Sharanam Nasti Tvameva Sharanam Mamaha Tasmat Karunya Bhavena Raksha Maheshwara Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Narayanarpanamastu. Once again, many happy celebrations of Ramanavami. Sai Ram.